Good evening. As we begin our study tonight for Wednesday night study, I want to share with you some words from Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. The scriptures surely teach us that we are to listen to our fathers and our mothers. I came across a very interesting article called 8 Family Values That Every Family Should Encourage in Their Children by Ashley Aberson, and it is in an article in the publication Fatherly. And I want to talk to you very briefly this evening about those 8 family values that every family should encourage in their children. Again, Proverbs says, Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. These are 8 things that we need to teach our children. First of all is kindness. The Bible says that we're to be kind one to another. You know, when we talk about kindness, we have to realize that in our very nature sometimes it's difficult to be kind because of circumstances and situations that happen in our lives. But the Bible calls us and commands us to be kind. And when there's kindness in the family certainly is blessed. Well, that's one value, kindness. There's another, self-compassion. Now, what does Miss Aberson mean by self-compassion? She means that making mistakes is okay, that no one is perfect. I remember when I was growing up, and I brought my report card home one time, and I'm not a very good math student, and I made a C in math and made A's in just about every other subject. And my father said to me, he said, son, he said, just do the very best you can. And if that's the very best you can, then a C is good enough. Not only do we need to be kind in the family, but we need to exercise some self-compassion, realizing that we're not perfect in every area. No child is going to be like another child. Every child has his or her own gifts that God has given them. Some people are good at mathematics. Some people are good at English and mathematics. Some children are great athletes. Some are wonderful scholars. It's all right not to be perfect. And in the pursuit of perfection sometimes, I think children believe that they're not allowed to make mistakes. Listen, there was only one perfect person who ever walked the face of this earth, and his name was Jesus. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. So let's practice a little kindness and a little self-compassion. Making mistakes is all right. We're human. The third family value that she talks about is integrity. Doing what you say you will do and following through with your promises. If there was ever a time in our society when integrity is at a premium, it is now. If you promise someone you're going to do something, do it. Let me tell you a little story about what my grandfather taught his sons, and he had 9 of them, and his grandsons, he had 14 of them. He told this little story to illustrate a person with integrity and a person who keeps his word. He said, boys, if there is a time in your life when you're selling an automobile and you put that automobile up for sale and a gentleman comes by and offers you $200 for that automobile and you say, I'll take it. But he says to you, give me 15 minutes to go to the bank and I'll bring you back $200 to pay for the car. If in those 15 minutes while that gentleman is gone, somebody comes by and offers you $300 or $400 for that car, Grandpa said, keep your word. That car has already been sold for $200. Integrity is something that we need to instill in our families and in our children. Doing what you say you will do and following through with all of your promises. Well, Miss Aberson talks about kindness, self-compassion, integrity, and then the fourth value is responsibility. It builds better behavior when you hold people responsible for their actions. And if there was ever a time in our nation when we need to hold children especially responsible for their actions, it is now. We need to teach children that there are consequences to your actions. And you cannot always blame someone else. And we live in a society just like the very first man and woman in the Garden of Eden who wanted to pass the buck and pass the blame. We need to teach our children to take responsibility for their actions. And not only to take responsibility for their actions, but to hold them responsible and make them responsible for the things that they say and the things that they do. Children that are allowed to be irresponsible grow up to be adults who put little value on responsibility. Oh, how important it is to instill the value of responsibility. Kindness, self-compassion, integrity, responsibility. And fifth, Miss Aberson says that we ought to teach the family value of mutual respect, that everyone respects everyone. I've often said to parishioners, if you have to choose between loving me and respecting me, I'd rather you respect me. If you respect me, you might love me, but not vice versa. Respect, honoring other people's opinions and their ideas, being respectful in society, saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, being the kind of children that we can be proud of, holding people to a high standard, respecting people, even though they might be different from us. And then her sixth value that she believes every family ought to encourage their children to encompass is honesty. Tell the truth and admit when you're wrong. One of the most difficult phrases to utter in the English language is that I was wrong. We need to be honest. We need to be people who tell the truth. We need to be kind with the truth, but we need to be truthful. Wonder what would happen in our world if all the politicians and all the leaders of our nation were truly honest and truly admitted when they were wrong. I promise you we would live in a different world and in a different society. Teach your children to be honest and to tell the truth. And then there's a seventh family value that she talks about, and that value is flexibility. To be able to roll with the punches. Sometimes we get so stuck in our ways and we live by lists that we make up, and we live by rules and regulations that encompass us and enslave us. Hear my heart this evening. We need to learn to be flexible. Life does not always fit into our narrow interpretation and understanding of how it's supposed to be. Sometimes children are thrown curves, and sometimes things happen in their lives that force them to reevaluate their rules and their regulations. I believe that there are rules and regulations that need to be followed, but I also believe that we need to learn to be flexible and roll with the punches. She also has a final family value that I think encompasses the first 7 that we've talked about tonight. Let's go over those. Kindness, self-compassion, integrity, responsibility, mutual respect, honesty, and flexibility. Her final family value that she believes ought to be incorporated and encouraged in the life of every child is fairness. Just to treat people fairly. You know, the Bible talks about treating people with kindness and love and respect. That old golden rule, treat people as you would like to be treated. I want to encourage you tonight to think about some of the things we've talked about in this short study, about these 8 family values that every family should encourage in the lives of their children. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. In Proverbs, such marvelous, matchless words to live by. God bless, and good evening.